You ready? Fins up. All right, welcome everybody to our very first episode of the Fins Up podcast. This is a podcast made for fans by us fans. We're Ole Miss fans. This podcast is everything to do with Ole Miss. I'm Chad. With me today is JC. He'll be with me a lot. Miles couldn't be here tonight, but Miles is calling in. Miles has some great information. We're going to be talking about the Olympic athletes. What's going on with them, and Miles has a great perspective. He got to watch Last Chance U. I haven't seen that. It seems to be all the rage on Netflix. Everybody's talking about this right now, so I can't wait to get his perspective on it.
Oh, it's absolutely phenomenal.
So you've seen it too?
I have seen it. If you're a football fan, you should check it out just because it shows you how interesting junior college football really is. I mean, I went to a junior college first 2 years of my college career. I know you went to one. When you're there, you take it for granted because you don't care about the sports teams because you're looking at four-year university sports teams or you're looking at professional teams.
Yeah.
But it's a cutthroat business in junior college football because these kids are either they've fallen from grace from a D1 program and they're trying to get back there, or they're trying to prove that they belong there in the first place. They never got their fair shake is how they feel about it. And so they're going out to do the thing. And it was just an interesting experience to see not only just a junior college, because there are a lot of really top-tier junior colleges in the nation, but you're seeing a East Mississippi Community College from tiny, tiny, tiny little Scuba, Mississippi, which if I'm not mistaken, it's probably a 3-hour drive from here.
Wow.
It's exactly, if you put a pinpoint in the middle of Mississippi and took it directly east, there's Scuba, right before you get to Alabama.
Well, I can't wait to dig into this and see. I guess after talking to you down, just hearing about it, because I really haven't heard about it other than just rumor. I haven't watched it. I admit that. I heard Chad Kelley was in it.
Yes, he makes a little cameo.
So I can't wait to talk to Miles when he calls in and finds out, and find out really what happened with Last Chance U. I'm kind of excited about that. But what we really want to do, this podcast, what it's going to be every week is talking Ole Miss. Whatever it is that's happening at Ole Miss, we're going to talk about it. We're going to have a lot of fun things. We're going to have fan rants. So if you want to call in and vent, whether it's venting about Ole Miss, you want to rah-rah Ole Miss, or you want to diss an opponent, then do that. All we ask you got to keep it clean. We're going to try to keep this as much a family show as possible. We know how fandom is because we know how we are.
Right.
So we had this discussion before we came on there. So we're going to keep it clean for you guys. So if you call in, you want your fan rant aired on our show, then just try to keep it clean when you do that. And let's get it started. I mean, there's no sense of waiting around and talking about this any longer.
Right.
First of all, let's talk about the state of the Ole Miss Rebels right now.
So, as it pertains to the football team, of course, first we have to address the elephant in the room. And that is the possible sanctions from the NCAA.
That's right.
Of course, no one knows how it's going to shake out. But I can't help but feel that it will be severe. I don't know if that'll necessarily include a postseason ban, but it could mean the loss of several scholarships, which could have a long-term impact. And if it is a postseason ban, let's say 2-year postseason ban, we could be looking at some top-tier athletes transferring from the University of Mississippi, or just not even, for high school students, not even considering Ole Miss because of that postseason ban. You don't have a chance to play in the Sugar Bowl. You don't have a chance to play for a national championship. You don't have a chance to play for an SEC championship. So why do it to yourself when you can go to Alabama? You can go to Georgia, who is on the rise. I've never seen Kirby Smart as a head coach. I know he's an awesome defensive coordinator, but I'm buying into what he's doing down there in Georgia because he's doing some top-notch recruiting, and his new freshman quarterback, Jacob Eason's going to be scary.
Well, this is and I guess that's really one of the issues I've always had with the NCAA in general is if you have an athlete, one or two athletes who are screwing up, and then your whole program now has to suffer for that.
Right.
So you have all these other kids who are doing the right thing, doing what they're supposed to do. Now all of them are punished for what these two people did, or even that just that one person. One person is all it takes to screw up an entire program. Well, one person helped from the coaches, because that's really where the majority of the
that's where
problems
the infraction comes from. Is coaches can't be involved.
That's right.
Boosters cannot be involved. If a kid's doing something to make his money to get by, as long as the NCAA doesn't find out, then it's fine. And I mean that in the sense of, for clarification, I mean that in the sense of, if I'm not mistaken, these kids aren't allowed to have a job.
Which is insane.
Right, because half of these kids, you got kids from Texas, kids from the Northeast, kids from the West Coast, East Coast, coming down to Mississippi. They don't know anybody except their teammates and their coaches. How do you get an income? Because you still have to live.
Well, and I think people are under the I want to be nice when I say this.
A lot of people have the impression that a meal plan for the school cafeteria cuts it. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Because those meals are budgeted. You're allowed X amount of food, so many times a day. And if you're a 300-pound offensive lineman, X amount of food is just not going to cut it for you, because you literally need more food to keep your mass. You need more food to keep your strength up and that energy up.
Well, exactly. And these players who come in, those guys are not rich. Their families don't have a lot of money. If they're lucky enough to get a scholarship, then they're barely getting by, because they're getting their tuition paid for and maybe their dorm if they're staying in a dorm. And like you said, some of the food paid for. But, these guys want to be able to do things too. That's why you see, I think, a lot of them falling into those situations. They don't have vehicles to drive, and then somebody comes along and offers you something. It's really hard to pass that up.
And then you have weird situations, which I get why parents do it, but at the same time, I couldn't see myself doing it. And that's, your kid has a scholarship to go to where, name a college or university. Let's say I have a son and he's going to University of Washington. Some of these parents move with their kids.
Yeah, they do.
And then they have tough times finding jobs. Like, they might find a house or an apartment, but if you can't find a job, then you have tough times paying your bills. And that's kind of what it seemed like happened with the Laramie situation. His parents came down to the Oxford area, but, work is what it is, and we know from living here that Mississippi doesn't necessarily have the greatest economy.
Well, exactly, and I just think I think the punishment, to me, what I've always said was, if you've got an assistant coach who's doing this, nobody, the other coaches don't know about it, then the punishment really should fall on the people who are doing the crime. If it's a booster, then they should be banned from doing that.
Absolutely.
If it's a coach, he should be fired and not be able to participate in those programs anymore.
And the way the NCAA typically handles these things, that's what happens. The assistant coach loses his job, but that's usually the university handling that. But the boosters become banned from their affiliation with the athletic department. But at the same time, as the head coach, you are responsible. And that's what you take on. If they're paying you $4 million, schools, you're paying you $4 million a year, $5 million a year, $6 million a year. You're responsible for every person on that staff. You're responsible for every player on the roster. I don't care if it's a red shirt, a gray shirt, a starter, a backup. You are held accountable for every one of their actions. You're talking 100 people, and they all fall under your umbrella. So when something like this happens, the punishment has to start from the top, because the leadership starts at the top.
Yeah, even if it's unrealistic expectation for that person to know everything.
Right.
Just being someone who managed a few employees when I was managing stores, I mean, you don't know what these people are doing.
Exactly.
You can't. It's impossible. And to have that big of a program, you just cannot do it. I don't care what anybody says.
And I don't think it's anything against Hugh Freeze. Like you said, that's nearly impossible to do.
It is. And so now the whole program gets shut down for what these couple of individuals
I mean,
did.
I don't think it's going to be a deal like what happened with SMU back in the day. They're not going to get the death penalty or anything like that.
Did. Yeah.
Because, for people who don't know, SMU was actually, they were beginning to gain prominence. They became a really solid football program. The NCAA they had several infractions. NCAA came down with a guillotine and cut their heads right off, and they have yet to bounce back to this day.
But, the NCAA, they want to be important.
Yes,
they are
do.
so into themselves and
Right.
their power and all that stuff. And that's why we see a lot of this. And people can deny it all they want to. But the fact is, people who have that kind of power, they want to use that power and let you know they have the power to affect you, even though they really don't have an effect on anything else that you do.
And the saddest part is, if you're punishing a professional for what they do in their professional life, that's fine. You get onto an assistant coach and you give him a punishment. You get onto a head coach, you give him a punishment. But when you start ruining the lives of an 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kid,
exactly.
I have a problem with that.
I do too, because they are kids.
And it's not like these kids are doing horrible things. They're like, hey, like my parents need the rent paid, or they're going to lose the house. It's not like they're saying, it's not like a kid's going out there and selling heroin on the streets. Because if they are, they're going to get kicked out of the program. They're going to do that to themselves.
Exactly.
If those kinds of actions they'll be held accountable for. But there comes a time and place where too much is too much, and the NCAA still has yet to come to that understanding.
Oh, and it's so sad that we're now where we are. It's 2016, and we still are dealing with this and all the other aspects. The NCAA, and what's sad to me is the NCAA as a body could do so much good for all of these athletes who bring so much money into the NCAA, into the college sports, into these universities. They could do so much more for them, and they don't do it.
Yeah, I had a professor one time, and I won't say at what university I attend.
Yeah.
But he told me, you look at the football program, and they bring in X amount of millions of dollars, but they also have to spend the same amount. Well, that's not necessarily true. Maybe the football program does have to spend that much money, and the ticket sales that they generate equivalent to that same amount of money. But you're also bringing in people from around the country. People are coming down to these games. They're pumping money into not only the city of Oxford's economy, but they're pumping that money into the school's economy as well. So even though it doesn't go directly to the football program in so many ways, it still goes to the university, and the university does still profit off of it.
Well, exactly, and and that whole system is a community building system for the communities that these universities are involved with and are a part of. And it's just, and I think it's real easy for these people not to see the entire picture. It's really easy when you live in your big house,
right,
on that hill.
You have your ivory tower looking down on everyone else.
Yeah, and that's not and look, that is not a dig on rich people. I know a few, and they're great people. That's not what we're saying.
If they want to be.
Yeah. And those people in the NCAA, they don't want to be. They see power, and that's what it is. And they can come on and have any excuse they want to, but all you have to do is look at their actions. That's all you ever have to do to really be able to see somebody's character.
And going back to the punishment of these kids, the players, so many of these players come from nothing. Maybe meals are hard to come by. You might get by eating ramen noodles. Maybe you don't get meals. And I know that's not every player, because there are players that do come from affluent families. But I would wager, because I don't know for a fact, this is me, just kind of saying what I feel about it. I feel like the majority of players, whether it's 60%, 70%, whatever, come from scenarios where their parents aren't making that kind of money. Definitely not enough not enough that they could afford tuition for this player to walk on to the program or anything like that. And so when you punish a kid and make him ineligible to play, you're hurting his chances. You're hurting his draft stock. Because let's be honest, who wants to go play college football and say, well, I just want to be an accountant? Who wants to play college football and get their body beat up and say, well, I think I'll just be a history professor? These kids all want to play in the NFL.
Yep.
Or the vast majority of them do. I'm sure there are some who may be realistic and know that they're not going to make it into the league. So that is their thing. They're like, hey, yeah, I'm going to get my degree because I can use that to still make a lot of money.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, I think that's why you see so many of these kids who they never make it through their senior season.
Right.
I mean, because at their junior year, they're good enough. Everybody's already saying this guy's going to the NFL. So you see why they come out early.
But at the same time, the flip side of that is you got so many people telling these kids, man, you're good enough. You can do it. You can make it. And so they leave after their junior year. They don't even get drafted.
Wash out.
Don't get drafted. They get signed to a practice squad. They get cut 2 weeks into training camp.
And they're done.
And that's it. Or they get invited back to training camp, maybe for the next 3 years. But each year they keep getting cut. What are you going to do? What's your backup plan?
Yep, exactly.
So, the state of college football as a whole, I know we've gotten way off topic here, but the state of college football as a whole is there's so many people that want to look out for their universities, but they don't want to look out for the kids.
Exactly.
And, I think that's from every level. That's the NCAA, that's advisors, that's coaching staffs, that's boosters, that's fans, that's your classmates, because they're fans too.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I love about Hugh coming in and coaching the Rebels, because he genuinely cares about his players. And honestly, being an Ole Miss fan for 20-something years now that I've lived here, we never had that or seen that. It's never been to this degree where he's come out and said, you know what, I love this player, I'm there for this player, and they show it and they do it.
I just think Hugh Freeze he's a special kind of coach.
Yeah, exactly.
He is a true player's coach, and I think that's why he's had such great success at every place he's ever coached, whether it's been women's high school basketball, Arkansas State, now at Ole Miss. He's an extraordinary man who he puts his confidence in his players. He's publicly adamant, like you said, that he will throw his support behind his players, and he may know that his players didn't do what was right by the NCAA, even though they didn't do anything illegal, but they didn't do it right by the NCAA. But that's the kind of leader I want to coach my son.
Exactly.
Is someone who's going to have my son's back every step of the way.
Yep. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, get in a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. And we're going to talk about, when we come back, we're going to talk about the wide receivers and that wide receiver situation now that Laquan's gone, Cody Core's gone. So when we come back from break, we're going to jump right into that. Are you struggling to lose weight and keep it off? Are you tired of all the fad diets that get you nowhere except miserable? Cockrell Family Medical Center in Senatobia has just opened their new weight loss clinic. If you are serious about getting healthy and losing weight, then call 662-301-1128 to schedule your appointment. Cockrell Family Medical Center. Your health matters. All right, here we are back from break. I'm Chad. I'm here with JC. Let's talk about the wide right situation. When we're talking about the wide receivers for Ole Miss, who is Chad Kelley going to throw to this year? What do you see when you look at these guys?
Well, it's tough because you lose Laquan Treadwell, arguably the greatest. I don't even know if it's arguable. Like, he is the greatest wide receiver that has ever come through the University of Mississippi. He made the jump from Illinois, took a chance to come all the way down here to put himself in the best situation possible, and he did that. It was a first-round draft pick of the Vikings this year. And, last year he caught, I think, 80-something catches for over 1,100 yards. And don't quote me on the touchdowns. It was 10-plus. I know that much. It's somewhere between 10 and 15. It may have been 15. But, that's the kind of production that's hard to duplicate, especially when he's gone. Of course, you also lose Cody Core, who got drafted in the Tom Brady spot. Picked 199 in the 6th round to the Cincinnati Bengals, which they're having a massive wide receiver overload in the Bengals. Not overload, they're reconstructing their wide receiver core. They had several players leave, and Cody Core, who knows, in a couple years we might see him as the number 2 guy with A.J. Green there, because A.J. Green is just too good. He's not losing that spot anytime soon.
But seeing those guys out on the field together is going to be amazing. Yes. I'm not a Bengals fan, but that'll be something fun to see.
I'm a believer in Andy Too Dandy Dalton, so we'll see how that works out.
So Chad Kelley, who's he going to throw to?
Well, speaking of him throwing to people, that's the cool thing about this wide receiver situation right now is, yes, you lose Laquan, which is crushing. Yes, you lose Cody Core, which is crushing. You lose Collins Moore, but you still have Quincy Adebojo. Damari Stringfellow is there with 2 more years of eligibility. He's technically a junior since he had to sit out a year for his transfer because he transferred from the University of Washington after his freshman year. So Demore, he's built in that same style as Laquan. Big physical receiver, can come up and attack the ball, whereas Quincy's the speedster. He's the deep threat. He can take the top off the defense. When he takes the top off the defense, Demore Stringfellow, that leaves the underneath open for him. If it's not him, then you've got the slot, which a lot of people have said that it would be Markel Pack that would do that, come in and be the slot receiver. But the problem with Markel is consistency. You see flashes of brilliance from him, but you can't get it every single game. You can't get it every single play. But Markel Pack and DeMarcus Lodge will be good as far as kick returns, punt returns. That's where they're going to excel if Markel can make sure he doesn't drop as many punts. That's been an issue last year. But the guy I'm looking at is Van Jefferson. He's a redshirt freshman. He took his red shirt last year, but they're saying that he has improved by leaps and bounds from last year to this year. And Van Jefferson's looking like that guy who can be the slot receiver. So if you've got Quincy Adebojo running 20-yard routes, you got Demore Stringfellow running 10-yard routes, don't take your eye off of Van Jefferson in a 5-yard running a 5-yard slant or a 5-yard in, because he's got the agility to put the moves on, to break ankles, and to make big plays happen.
And I think, and here's kind of the thing about this, especially last year, because with Laquan being who he is and who he was last year, we forget about all these other guys that had a hand in helping Ole Miss win these games. It wasn't Laquan every play scoring these touchdowns.
Now, I don't even think that there is an argument that the biggest play of the Ole Miss season that everybody remembers is Ole Miss, Alabama. Ole Miss is in Tuscaloosa. Of course, Alabama wants to win this game because the year before, Ole Miss beat Alabama in Oxford by picking off the football in the end zone with time getting really low in the game. But it was a simple spot pass, I feel like, or maybe a bubble screen to Laquan Treadwell, and the ball just bounces off his hands. Bounces straight off his hands, which was unusual. I mean, granted, he had 2 defenders closing in on him, but the ball flies over both defenders and just, I don't know if it was just a heads-up play by Quincy Adebojo or if it was a case of right place, right time, but the ball falls right into his hands and he takes off and he's gone. So watch out for Quincy to be a superstar this year. I think he is a senior, so if he wants to prove himself, this is your last chance, Quincy.
Yeah.
Which, granted, he led the team. He was second on the team in receiving last year, second in touchdowns behind Laquan. So he had a nice coming out party last year, but this could be the year that he really develops. Of course, Demore's got 2 more years, and Van Jefferson being a redshirt freshman, he's got anywhere from 2 to 4 years of eligibility, depending on how he develops and how he wants to handle it. But the exciting part for me is the freshman wide receivers coming in. And there's Trey Nixon, but the 2 that you're going to hear a lot about are going to be A.J. Brown and D.K. Metcalf. A.J. Brown is from Starkville High School, D.K. Metcalf from Oxford High School. But these 2 dudes, I actually watched their high school game last year. I don't remember which channel. It may have been on one of the ESPNs. But A.J. and D.K., every time their respective offense had the ball when Starkville played Oxford last year, that's who you watched, because those dudes were stealing the show left and right. And if it weren't for the fact that Ole Miss's receiving core was so deep this year, almost any other year, prior to Hugh Freeze getting to the University of Mississippi, A.J. Brown and D.K. Metcalf would be the starters without question, just because they have that kind of talent, they have that kind of ability. But we got to see how it transitions to the college game.
So with that being said, Chad Kelley. Now,
Swag Kelley.
Do you think he's going to rely more on Evan Ingram? And can he minimize interceptions this year?
Well, that's the cool thing. Ole Miss has this great receiving core. But then you have Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram may go down as the best tight end in Ole Miss history, which is saying something because they had Wesley Walls. And for people who may be too young to remember, because I was fairly young when Wesley Walls was, I don't know, he may have already been out of Ole Miss by the time I could really realize what I was watching when I looked at football games. I remember him playing for the Panthers, and he was good, just a good wide receiver. But Evan Ingram has the size, he has the hands, he has the speed, and if what I've been reading is true, his blocking has gotten so much better this year. He's going to be a senior. So Evan Ingram, to me, he's the wild card that that everyone's going to, of course, pay attention to the wide receivers because you got to give Quincy that respect. And DeMore has shown flashes, but Evan Ingram's a mismatch because who are you going to cover him with? He's too tall to be covered by a corner. He's too fast to be covered by a linebacker or a safety. So it really puts defenses in this bad situation. But they've got other capable tight ends. Now, Jeremy Liggins, he's moved from the tight end position over to playing offensive line this year. Mostly to Laramie Tunsil being gone. They need someone that they can plug in and play. It's not like he was exactly a small tight end. He was almost too big to be a tight end in the first place. But they still have guys like Hunter Thurley, Dawson Knox, Ty Quick, Taz Zettergren from Senatobia, Mississippi. He's a hometown kid here, so shout out to Taz. But they also have 3 freshmen in Octavius Cooley, Jacob Mathis, and pardon me if I butcher some names here and how they're supposed to be pronounced. But I don't know if this is supposed to be Gabe Angel or Gabe Angel. I'm not sure. There's no accent mark, so I'm going to go with Gabe Angel. But Octavius Cooley's the one to watch. He's a true freshman. They've got so many tight ends, they may redshirt Octavius. But he's going to be the next big thing as far as tight ends for Ole Miss. So Chad Kelley has options, without a doubt.
Which is only going to make... I think this year they could be more explosive than they were last year. And
yes,
that's really saying something with, the stars that they had on that team last year. But I'm excited to see what the offense is able to do this year.
The only thing for me that, I'm just not 100% behind right now is the offensive line. Just because you lost the best pass blocker in the country, or best offensive lineman, period, in the country. I understand there were guys that were drafted ahead of him, but that's due to that bong gas mask video, whatever. But Laramie Tunsil's the man.
Oh yeah.
And when you lose a player of that caliber, it hurts. But like I said, Jeremy Liggins is going to slide over there. Chad Kelley has weapons to throw to. We've seen that Chad Kelley can make plays happen with his feet. But what's the running game like?
That's going to be interesting.
Can Wilkins and Judd pick up the slack and really make that thing go? Because that's been the problem, not only with Hugh Freeze's tenure, but prior to Hugh Freeze's running game has been absolutely weak in the years. Of course, you get brilliant plays, like several years ago, Jeff Scott, at the end of Ole Miss Vanderbilt, first game of the season. There may have been less than a minute left on the clock, maybe 30 seconds, something like that, and Jeff Scott breaks off a 75-yard run to win the game. Which
is amazing. Which
it was amazing because if you watch him the rest of the year, yes, he had the agility to make things happen, but he was by no means a superstar running back. So if they can get their offensive line to play solid and protect Chad Kelley, and they can get the running game going to take the pressure off of Chad Kelley's going to show why he declared himself the best college football quarterback.
Yeah, I hope he really shows it this year. I'm so excited for this season to start.
I mean, he's got all the talent in the world.
He really
it's
does.
inarguable. It's just, and of course, a lot of people know by now, Chad Kelley had trouble when he was at Clemson. Got into fights with the coaches, yelling at them on the sidelines. Acting like a fool. That's inarguable. It happened. There's video footage of it. He released a rap song while he was being recruited, which, in all honesty, not half bad. Like, it's definitely not the greatest song of all time, but it's not half bad. But then he goes to East Mississippi Community College, which, if you watch Last Chance U, everybody, then you'll actually see Chad. He'll talk about his time at East Mississippi Community College. But that's kind of where he turned it around, because he realized this is his last chance. He messed up too many times. And then he committed to the University of Mississippi, and now the cool thing about Chad is he's from Buffalo, New York, where his Uncle Jim quarterbacked the Buffalo Bills, took him to 4 straight Super Bowls. But now he's in Mississippi. He finds himself here from Scuba to Oxford, which in and of itself is a culture shock. Completely forget the fact that he's from New York. But he loves Mississippi now. Like, he's committed to the state of Mississippi. His driver's license is a Mississippi driver's license. It's not a New York State driver's license. So Chad Kelley loves it here. I think he loves how people are here. We're, quote unquote, some of the nicest people in the world. And I don't know if that whole Southern hospitality thing is just overstated.
I think it's a true thing.
It may be a true thing.
When you go to other places, you really see that.
Right.
And I think that is, for somebody like that who's never got to be around something like that, that is very enticing.
Yes, and he loves it here. So I think it'll be interesting to see, because I'm not trying to take anything away from Deshaun Watson. He was a Heisman finalist last year. But Chad Kelley's the man. Until someone proves to me otherwise, Chad Kelley's the man. But he has to decrease the turnovers.
Exactly.
Taking care of the football's got to be his top priority now, because he showed that he can sling the ball around. Like, he's been here one season, he's already set school records. Broken Eli Manning's records.
Well, we're going to see early this year.
Right. He's going to be tested.
Come September 5th, we will know very, very quickly. Because, like we were talking about earlier, and like you may mention, Ole Miss is going to face two top 10 opponents in the first 3 games this year.
Right. You get Florida State, and then you get a cupcake game, but that's traditional for Ole Miss. That's usually what they do at their second game. It's a cupcake. And then your third game, boom, you got Alabama again. And then I'm not sure if it's the next week, or it may be the very next week or the week after. You've got Georgia, and like I said, Georgia's looking good. Nick Chubb's back, For people who might have forgotten, Nick Chubb could have won the Heisman last year had he not blown out his ACL.
Exactly.
And so Nick Chubb, with that revamped defense, being led by Kirby Smart, by the time Ole Miss plays Georgia could be in the top 10. So that could be 3 top 10 opponents in the first 4 games.
Yeah, it is not going to be an easy season at all.
Because then you still have the rest of the SEC West, at least, that you have to play. So Chad Kelley's got his work cut out for him this year. If he wants to be the best quarterback in college football, he absolutely has the opportunity to prove it. Because if he can ball out, do his thing, if they go undefeated, even if they take 1 loss, I think Chad Kelley is the first quarterback drafted next year.
I think so too. I would be shocked if he's not. So, well, guys, we got to take another break real quick. Give some love to our sponsors. But when we come back, speaking of Chad Kelley, we're going to get into Last Chance U. Miles is calling in. We're going to talk with Miles about Last Chance U, and we're also going to talk about the Olympic athletes, some of the Ole Miss players and Ole Miss alumni who are actually in the Olympics this year. So I'm kind of excited about that. See what he has to say, and you guys get introduced to Miles real quick. So when we come back from break, I can't wait to talk about this. Are you struggling to lose weight and keep it off? Are you tired of all the fad diets that get you nowhere except miserable? Cockrell Family Medical Center in Senatobia has just opened their new weight loss clinic. If you are serious about getting healthy and losing weight, then call 662-301-1128 to schedule your appointment. Cockrell Family Medical Center. Your health matters. So now with me, I've got Miles on the phone. And Miles, earlier in the podcast, me and JC were talking. We briefly mentioned Last Chance U. So can you go ahead and tell us what that's about? because I hear all the talk about it, and it seems to be this little phenomenon that's going on Netflix right now, especially amongst the sporting world. So, what is Last Chance U?
Right. Last Chance U, it's about East Mississippi Community College, which I feel like most people in Mississippi are familiar with, because they've won, I believe it was three, either they were going for the third or they have won three national championships back to back to back. And they're a real big deal as far as junior college goes, because in Mississippi, that's where most of the powerhouses are, or right here in Mississippi as far as junior college. And EMCC, they're definitely top notch. They win, it seems like, every other year.
But what was the connection between Ole Miss and Last Chance U?
Okay, well, the connection obviously would be our last three quarterbacks. Last two starting quarterbacks, and then another one, Randall Mackey. He was a backup. Our last three quarterbacks have came from there. So you got Randall Mackey, which was from 3 years ago. He was there Hugh Freeze's last year, but didn't play quarterback. He played quarterback under Houston Nutt. He came from EMCC. People will remember Randall Mackey because he had a few big games, one against Georgia under Houston Nutt, but then that last year under Hugh Freeze, they slipped him into the slot receiver role, slipped him into running back even some, beside Bo Wallace, and he really thrived there. And then after that, Bo Wallace also, after Arkansas State, William Bo Wallace, he came from, he didn't get the starting gig at Arkansas State, but so he decided to go EMCC. Then he ended up, because Freeze went to Ole Miss, ended up getting the starting gig. And then lastly, Chad Kelley obviously went to EMCC after his little stint at Clemson, where he got in an argument with the coach, and then the whole deal in the parking lot with the girl yelling at her, and then he got kicked off the team there, and then went to EMCC, which is why they call it Last Chance U. Obviously, it's all these guys' last chance. They either didn't get the starting gig, got in some trouble like Chad Kelley did, and then they go to EMCC. They try to get themselves straight. Buddy Stevens, a lot of the people saw him on there. He was a harsh guy that wasn't a big encourager. He was a big yeller, pretty much, but he got them straight. He gets them going. And then the academic advisor there, Miss Wagner, I think she was the hero of the documentary. She got those guys straight. She was kind of the sensitive one, made sure to get their grades up. Basically, EMCC had the coach. He was kind of the tough side, got them straight as far as football goes. And then Miss Wagner, the academic advisor, she got them straight as far as grades go. So they go there. It's their last chance. Get real good prepped, and then they're groomed for D1 football after that.
Well, that's pretty awesome. So I heard Chad Kelley was actually in Last Chance U, or made an appearance in there?
He was. He made several appearances. They had a couple interviews with him. You'll see him. Everybody needs to go check it out. You'll see him throughout there in 2 or 3 episodes. Coach Buddy Stevens, who is the coach at EMCC, he talks with him on the phone, going down the road, and it's a pretty cool moment.
Oh, that's pretty sharp, man. Well, all right, so let's switch gears real quick, and let's talk about the Olympic athletes. Ole Miss has a couple of Olympians, don't they?
Oh yeah, more than a couple. We got 8.
Wow, see, I didn't know that.
Right. I'll start off with I got me a little sheet right here, but I'll start off with the women's track athletes, because I think the little underlying story here, women's track at Ole Miss has never really been at elite levels, and we got a new coach there that Ross Bjork hired. Her name is Connie Price Smith, and she's a 4-time Olympian also, but she's the new coach there, and she got hired in 2015, and she's been killing it so far. She brought a bunch of good athletes. She came from Southern Illinois, and she brought a bunch of her good athletes with her. And she's been killing it as far as women's track is going. And we got a lot of women's track athletes here. We'll start off with Raven Hulk Saunders. She likes to call herself Hulk. got that straight from Twitter. She's a women's shot put, which is going to be on August 12th. She's 20 years old, 3-time national champion. She followed Saunders from SIU, so she transferred from SIU over to Ole Miss. She set the U.S. women's record in the NCAA championships. She got 63 feet. Bested that at trials for Olympics was 64 feet. She had the top spot in the trials until right there at the very end and got beat out right there. I thought a cool story about Raven Saunders was, she didn't really have the money throughout her track career to get her places. And so her little town, she's kind of like a little hometown hero, and they would set different things up and have different events to send her places for track. And they actually did the same thing to send her family to the Olympics. They started a GoFundMe account, ended up getting like $22,000 to send her whole family over to Rio, and did a little Krispy Kreme fundraiser. So I thought that was really cool. For those of you out there that aren't really familiar with the shot put, it's a little metal ball or a little round ball, and it weighs nearly 9 pounds. And she's throwing that thing.
Good Lord.
It's a girl, and she's throwing that thing, 63, 64 feet, hurling that thing, man. And to put that in comparison, I remember in high school when I ran, there was guys, they were 6'4", 6'5", 250 pounds throwing that thing 30 feet. So, wow. I mean, you think about her throwing that. And then the next athlete I'll jump into, Brittany Reese. I think a lot more people are familiar with Brittany Reese. She's pretty famous around the Ole Miss community for women's long jump, which is going to be on August 16th and 17th. She's 29 years old. She actually holds more global long jump titles than any woman in history. She still lives in Mississippi, lives in the Gulfport area, and trains under the old Ole Miss head coach, Joe Walker. 6-time indoor champion, won gold last Olympics. She's trying to become the first woman to win back-to-back gold medals in long jump. Only one other woman has done it, but she got 2, but she didn't do it consecutively. She did it in 92 and 2000, I think. So she's trying to become the very first to do it back-to-back like that, to get back-to-back gold medals for long jump. And then the last women's track athlete is Gwen Berry. She's doing the women's hammer throw, and she's actually an assistant coach. She followed Connie Price-Smith over from SIU also, and in order to keep training under Connie Price-Smith. And she's going to do the hammer throw, which is kind of like, it looks like a shot put ball, but it's got a cord on it, and you hold it at a handle, and you just turn around and spin a lot and then throw it off. But it's really a cool sight to watch. And so she's, like I said, an assistant coach under Connie Price-Smith, still trains under her. And I think she'll be real fun to watch. She finished second in trials behind a 2-time Olympian. So hopefully she'll get up there and medal. And I forgot to mention, Brittany Reese is expected to win gold medal, and they're expecting Raven Hawk Saunders. They're expecting her to at least get silver or bronze. They said it would be a long shot for her to get gold, but we're still expecting something good out of her. All right, and then the next guy we're going to talk about, we're going to switch over to guys track. It's going to be Sam Kendricks. Sam does the pole vault. He's real well known in Oxford because he is from Oxford. He went to Oxford High School. His dad coached at Oxford. His event is going to be the August 13th and 15th. He won the NCAA championship back-to-back years for outdoor pole vault. I think he has the best chance to gain a medal in Rio outside of Brittany Reese and Raven Saunders. Some cool stuff on him. He's also an Army Reserve second lieutenant, which I thought was really cool. I actually know Sam. I did a pole vaulting clinic under him in high school, which I'll just say he's a better athlete than he is a teacher. So, real cool dude, though. I'll be rooting for him. Good luck to Sam. And then we'll move over to Antoine Hicks. Don't know a lot about this guy. I did some research, but he's going to be doing the men's 110-meter hurdles, but he won't be competing for USA. He'll be competing for Nigeria because his dad has citizenship there. He barely missed the qualifier to do USA the past 3 years, so he's been competing in Nigeria. And he'll be doing the 110-meter hurdles, so good luck to him. And this will also be his last chance because he's 31 years old, so most likely he'll probably have to not be able to do the next Olympics. The next is Ricky Robertson. Not a lot of information on him just because he's kind of had spotty results. He'll have awesome meet, and then he'll have a not so awesome meet. But he'll be doing the men's high jump August 14th and 16th. He's a first-time Olympian. He was at Ole Miss from 2010 to 13, was injured his 2014 season, had to sit out his senior season. He's only 5'11", but from the film I've seen, that guy, he's got some hops. He finished third in trials. They said he was sweating it out because it literally came down to, I think it was 1 inch that he was either going to qualify or not qualify, and he luckily made it. And then switching over from the track, we got 2 athletes left. I mean, Ole Miss track, they're killing it in the Olympics this year. 6 of our 8 athletes are going to be competing track athletes. So the last 2, Rafael Souza, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but she's going to be playing women's soccer for Brazil August 3rd, 6th, and 9th, and the rest is kind of to be determined depending on how far they go. She's the all-time leader at Ole Miss in goals with 44. And she's been playing on Brazil's U.S. women's national team for a while, even having to skip some college games to go play for Brazil's women's national team. So thought that was pretty cool. And then the last one, which I think Ole Miss fans will probably be the most familiar with, not really because of how good he was, but kind of for how underwhelming he was, unfortunately. Anthony Perez. He's going to be playing basketball for Venezuela. He's supposed to be playing August 6th, 8th, 10th, 12th, 14th. And then, you know, if they make it further, then he'll be playing then also, which they just beat China last night, which China's not so hot. But, you know, it was good to see Anthony Perez get a win. Most likely won't medal, but he was, you know, Andy Kennedy called him the most interesting project ever in his coaching career at Ole Miss. He came in a 4-star recruit, was expected to be really, really awesome, but only averaged 4 points and 2 rebounds. But nevertheless, got to go out there, cheer for our buddy Anthony Perez. Hopefully he'll go out there. Actually, when they played USA, I believe it was on the 6th, he actually went to coast and scored on Kevin Durant. So even though he didn't score many points, but he scored on Kevin Durant. So that's something cool right there. And that pretty much wraps up our athletes for Ole Miss that are going to be competing in the Olympics. And best of luck to them. It'll be fun to watch them.
Miles, I really appreciate you calling in and giving us the update on all that. We hate you couldn't be here in the studio with us, but hopefully next time you can be. You guys take care. I'll see you guys soon, and thanks for calling in, man.
All right, no problem. Go Rebs.
We appreciate Miles calling in. That was awesome. Thanks, Miles. Can't wait till you're actually with us in studio next time.
Right.
So can't wait to see you soon, buddy. But I want to shift gears real quick to another little thing, and we'll talk about defense next week, and we'll probably also talk about this whole SEC ACC thing that's going on. I really would love to hear some opinions about this. I thought that whole thing is just fascinating and kind of nuts.
Yeah,
really. I mean, it really is kind of just freakish. But we'll talk about that. But I really want to know, and I think a lot of people want to know, the Comdichis are not here anymore. They're gone. They have moved on. What can we expect on defense now that those 2 studs they're not playing for Ole Miss anymore?
Well, you know, when we saw Denzel after his redshirt freshman year, I mean, Denzel came out and he just lit it up. You know, it was inarguable that he was going to be crucial to our defense, even though he was an undersized linebacker. I mean, he was a small dude playing SEC linebacker. You know, playing against Derrick Henry and guys like that, maybe big. Derrick Henry's a monster of a man playing running back. And so, you get hit like that, you get beat up. And unfortunately, that's what happened to Denzel. His sophomore, junior, and senior years, he got hurt. But then he also got his brother Robert here. And as we know, Robert was a monster. He didn't always have stats, but it was the game tape that stood out because teams had to constantly double team him because he's that big, he's that strong, he's that fast, he's that agile. You know, that he demands your attention.
So does Ole Miss have anybody who can fill that role?
Well, if you're looking at linebackers, it's arguably the weakest spot on the defense. Secondary looks all right. The defensive line is where I have the most faith. I think that they can put the pressure on it that the secondary won't have to cover much. and neither will the linebackers. But the linebackers, that's where we're suspect because C.J. Johnson's gone, and he's been a key contributor for years. But Denzel's gone, Christian Russell's gone. But you still have DeMarcus Gates, you have Terry Caldwell, Taylor Polk, which to me, Taylor Polk is the guy to look at. I don't know that, I'm not a fortune teller. I can't gaze into the future. But Taylor Polk, he's a solid player. And as long as he's not getting burned in coverage, he should be fine. But it's how well will these new guys step up because they have to. You don't have an option anymore. You have to step up because the team needs you. And, that's also for guys like Tamario Strong, who has all the ability in the world, but let's see it. It's time.
This will be the year to prove it.
It's time to step it up.
And, there's no longer can you say, well, Robert's out there, and he's going to be able to take up so much slack, and CJ's out there, so, what are these guys going to do now?
But the defensive line, though, it's definitely the strength of the defense. You've got guys like Marquise Haynes, Breland Speaks.
There you
go. There's DJ Jones and Isaac Gross who can plug up the middle at nose tackle. And one thing that Marquise Haynes had he's quoted as saying on SaturdayDownSouth.com was, he said, "We got all the talent, all the keys we need for the D-line. We're just ready to go." He said that they're very competitive because they're always talking about their quote is, "Hey, we're going to meet you in the backfield, Marquise." Every member of that defensive line, their goal is to beat their man every play, or beat the double team, beat the triple team, and everyone to the ball carrier, everyone to the quarterback in the backfield, stop the plays before they can develop. And if they can really generate that kind of run stopping and that kind of pass rush, it's going to make everything a lot easier for everybody else on defense.
I just can't wait to see. I'm excited and I'm nervous at the same time.
Right.
Because just like you said, that defensive line you're not really worried about.
Yeah.
It's the back end of the defense.
But with the talent that they have, of course, Breland Speaks, if I'm not mistaken, he's not going to be available for the Florida State game due to an off-season DUI. But Marquise Haynes, he's coming off of last year. He was tied for fourth in the SEC with 10 sacks. He also had 16.5 tackles for loss. And I forgot about Fadal Brown,
Well, there's another one.
Fadal Brown, he started 8 games last year, and he's expected to convert some of his 10 hurries he had last season into actual sacks. So, and he had a foot injury, but he got out of a walking boot. But he's full go at practice. But Fadal Brown is just another man beast that these opposing offensive lines in the SEC are going to have to contend with.
Well, we're going to find out. And we're going to find out against some stiff opponents come September 5th. And then a couple weeks later when they have to play Bama.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be, because if you're not tested there, if they can hold up under those two surefire, they are going to have to show courage under fire.
Absolutely.
For sure when they suit up against those guys.
And people were worried about Florida State, last year. Because they've been impressive. Let's not forget, they won a national championship.
Exactly.
But a lot of those guys are gone.
Yes, they are.
But they still have Dalvin Cook at running back, and he's a monster. But they showed last year that they're vulnerable. Granted, their loss to Georgia Tech was real fluky. It was an amazing play for Georgia Tech. They blocked the field goal, and they return it all the way for the game-winning touchdown with no time on the clock. But, and even when Jameis Winston was still there, they never blew anybody out. They were just a tough, gritty team.
Yeah, they just hung around.
They would grind out their wins. They might win 35-32, or they might win 27-25, something like that. But as explosive as our offense is, and I know Florida State's defense is good, but I think if Ole Miss can start hot on offense, it's going to be a demoralizing day for Florida State.
I think so too.
But looking ahead, which we can as spectators and prognosticators, we can look forward to the Alabama game, whereas the players cannot afford that. But Alabama's the test. You know, when we beat Alabama, I say we like I'm on the team, but everyone who's a fan of a team knows what that means. We, that universal we. But the team, when they beat Alabama in Oxford 2 years ago, everyone said it was a fluke. That Ole Miss comes to Tuscaloosa, no chance they win, and then we did it.
Yeah, exactly.
The team did it last year. They beat Alabama back to back for, I'm not sure, it may have been the first time in school history or the first time in forever. But either way, as a fan, that was rewarding. That felt great.
It was pretty nice.
And then this year, you know, there's that chance that we can possibly turn it into a 3-year run where we topped Alabama. Granted, it would be twice in Oxford and only once in Tuscaloosa, but 3 wins over Alabama is 3 wins over Alabama.
Exactly, because I don't care what you say and what your feelings are about Alabama. I don't really care how much crap you talk about Alabama. It's a well-coached football team.
Absolutely.
They always have been under Nick Saban, because LSU was. Under Nick Saban, he's a hell of a football coach.
And they have the most talented team in the country every single year.
And that's actually what is so impressive about Ole Miss's wins over Bama.
They just have Ole Miss has more dog in them.
They do.
You know, it goes back to the old adage, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. And Ole Miss had more fight in them in those 2 games than the Alabama players did.
And if you look at Ole Miss's losses, it's when they relaxed.
Right.
There's no way they should have gotten beat by Memphis.
No.
As much as I like Paxton Lynch.
And they started off 14-0, and then they gave up 30-something unanswered points.
Yeah, it was just ridiculous.
The Arkansas game. If it's not for a 4th and 25, Ole Miss is in the SEC championship last year, not Alabama.
Exactly.
It's fluky things where they rest on their laurels because they think that they've got it in the bag. But you've got to give it everything you've got, 60 minutes.
That's right. They've got to close out those types of games this year. So,
and the Florida game last year, they just weren't ready.
No.
Florida showed progress, or showed that under Jim McElwain, they're here to do something in the beginning of the season, and then they just fell apart at the end of the year. But that Ole Miss game, they jumped out, smashed Ole Miss in the mouth, and basically showed them, hey, we're here to beat you up.
And
we're not here to beat you. We're here to beat you up. And in the process, they did beat them, and they beat them by a lot.
Yeah, that was the ugliest game I've seen them play in a long time. It was brutal.
Well, I say that was the ugliest game, but the ugliest game I've seen them play was Arkansas, not this past season, but 2 seasons ago. Got absolutely shut out in Fayetteville.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. That was so surprising.
And that was not a good Arkansas team.
No,
by any means.
It was one of those things where I think you can really take an opponent for granted and get beat by them.
I think that's what's happened. It's crazy. Back-to-back years, Ole Miss has beat Alabama, but back-to-back years, Arkansas has beat Ole Miss.
That's right.
So
I'm really looking forward to see what happens with them. We've got a special part of the podcast right now that I really am looking forward to. Guys, if you have a fan rant that you would like to send in to us, all you have to do is record your rant. You can record on your phone or any other listening device. Just make sure it's somewhat good quality. It doesn't have to be perfect. These are your rants. And send them to us at rant@finsuppodcast.com. And we will try to get those on the air. Just keep it clean.
Watch your language.
Watch your language for sure. But get those fins up. Tell us what you think about it. And rant away. You can rant about anything you want to. And we will pop that bad boy on there. Get excited. We want to hear you because this is about fans. This is for fans, about fans. Let us know how you feel. Get excited about it. You don't like something that's going on because, trust me, when we get to the season's coming up, and the show, I know, leading into their showdown with Florida State on the 5th, we've got a few fun things coming up, a couple of parodies we're going to do in there that should be a lot of fun. Because, let's be real about this, we're Ole Miss fans, we know what we're going to do to other fandoms. We just know how it is. And if you're not a fan and you're not doing those things, you're not much of a fan. I mean, we're going to talk smack. We're going to have fun. And if we have to eat crow after a loss, we just eat crow after a loss. It's just how it is. So what?
And for you people who don't know us personally, we are entertainers. It's what we do. It's
At
what
least
we've
we
always
think we are.
Well,
we try to be, for sure.
It's not even that we think we are. That's what we do.
That's right.
You know, we try to be entertaining. Now, you may not find our particular what we think is funny. You might not find it funny. However, we're going to lay the verbal smackdown on each and every opponent that Ole Miss faces this year, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. So we hope you guys enjoy it, and if you don't, let us know.
Yeah, and if you're sensitive towards that sort of thing, that's probably part of the podcast. You might want to switch off, but we're going to have a good time.
Right, and like I said, let us know if you don't like it. I mean, we probably won't care, but let us know anyway. We'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody's got an opinion.
Exactly.
Just know that ours in this podcast is the one that really matters. At the end of the day, we're going to talk about, that's why we started this thing, because this is what we really love to talk about. And one of the things I do want to mention before we go, there are a lot of other events that happen around Ole Miss that I know it gets shadowed by the football program.
Right.
I want to say rightfully so. It's kind of tragic because you have a lot of athletes at Ole Miss, and even I didn't realize how good some of these other programs were. We saw the baseball program this past spring. Boy, they were
phenomenal,
just awesome. But women's soccer, that's starting up, and coming up, I believe this coming Friday, they are in Dallas taking on SMU. I think it's an exhibition game. But last year, they really went far in the tournament last year. I believe they finally got put out by Texas A&M, and lost 3 times to Texas A&M last year, but they had some inspiring wins.
That hurts for us because we both grew up Texas Longhorns fans.
Yeah, so any loss to Texas A&M is not fun.
Whether it's Texas or whether it's Ole Miss, I do not enjoy losing to Texas A&M.
So, guys, we appreciate you tuning in. Next week, we're talking a lot of things. Like I said, we're going to talk about the SEC's acquisition of the ACC and that whole mess and all the rumors and things going on with that and how it's going to affect Ole Miss. We are going to talk a little bit more about the defense and maybe the running back situation, what's happened this weekend through the Olympics, catching up, and then we're really going to start delving into Florida State and who Ole Miss is going to have to really zero in on. This is one of those times when we really get to take a longer look at an opponent as opposed to during the season when you only have about a few days to get ready for those guys. So we're going to do that. We want to hear from you. Keep tuning in. Spread the word. We really want to get this podcast. If there's something special you want to hear and you want us to cover, again, go ahead and send in those. You can send that in to fans@finsuppodcast.com. So we've got 2 different email addresses. One's for the fans, things you want to hear, and the other one's for the rant@finsuppodcast.com. Get those into us. We want to hear them. We'll pick out the best ones, the ones that are fun. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be loud. Do it in your style, how you want to get your point across. We'll get you on there. I don't know if we'll make you famous, but we'll dang sure try to do it. So until then, keep after it. Keep supporting your team. At the end of the day, fins up, guys. We'll talk to you soon.